A historic day on Wall Street. Small business owners and other Alibaba users rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and in so doing, they officially started trading in what has become the largest initial public offering in U.S. history.
说实在，人家认为是希望拿更多的钱，我们希望是代表中国经济，代表中国的中小企业，代表中国的未来。
Founder Jack Ma carrying the weight of a country and its economy on his shoulders, now as China's richest man and the head of the Alibaba empire. Well, the record books have been rewritten, and Alibaba has proven that it has the magic words to open the doors of Wall Street. After a delayed start, as was expected with an IPO of this magnitude, trading kicked off just before noon to hoots and hollers on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Now, at the closing bell, Alibaba was at $93.89. That's a 38% pop from the $68 price of the record-breaking IPO. More than 127 million shares were traded within the first 15 minutes alone. Tracy Tandon was following all the action. Tracy, a slightly volatile day of trading, as is expected for an IPO. Give us the play-by-play.
That's right, Michelle. Alibaba has finally begun life as a publicly traded company. Now let's take you through exactly what Alibaba shares did today. The Alibaba shares opened 38% higher at $92.70 a share. Now, as you can see, there was a slight spike in trading day. That's Alibaba shares soaring to $99.70 a share, almost flirting with that $100 mark, but not getting there. And then as the day progressed, we see a slight dip. Alibaba shares down $89.95 per share. But then again, as the day continued, shares rallied, closing at $93.89 a share. That is a 1.3% increase on what shares opened at. Now, over 100 million shares were traded in just the first 10 minutes of trading. There's a lot of hype and a lot of frenzy that surrounded this Alibaba IPO. Let's take a look at all the action.
After months of hype and frenzy, Alibaba has made its public debut on the New York Stock Exchange. The Chinese e-commerce giant surged in its U.S. trading debut. The stock opened almost 38% higher at $92.70 per share. Alibaba's IPO is the largest in U.S. history. The company raised $21.8 billion in its public listing, more than Facebook, Twitter, JD.com, and Google. The internet retailer has also become one of the most valuable tech companies in the world. With a market capitalization of around $168 billion, Alibaba is now in the company of tech giants such as Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook. In an interview with CCTV on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, Alibaba founder Jack Ma says he now wants to focus on helping small and medium enterprises across China and the developing world.
其实阿里要发展102年，今天只是一个第一个里程碑。 或者第一个我们要到的阶段，后面走的路要很长。我觉得这些钱还是一句话，完全用在小企业，要用在消费者身上。今天不仅我们在中国进入农村，我们不仅要能够帮助更多的消费者，我们还希望能够帮助世界各地的，帮助阿根廷的、巴西的，我们能够帮助马来西亚、印尼的。所以全世界其实有很多的中小企业，很多消费者，其实他们是需要更多的机会。
Many experts say Alibaba's business model and its impressive trading debut could serve as a role model for other Chinese companies in search of similar success.
Alibaba's got the notoriety. It's positioned well. It all depends on what the CEO Jack Ma is going to do with it. It wasn't too long ago that he took Alipay right out of Alibaba, right under Yahoo's nose. Yahoo was certainly disgruntled about that. And he was pretty much able to do it because of the rules and regulations in place that Yahoo couldn't stop him. But we'll see what Jack does with the business going forward, and he certainly could be the company that's the leader, that sets the high mark if he wants to do so.
Alibaba's triumphant start has cast aside some of the fears investors might have in the company. At least for now, shareholders are enjoying the high of the so-called Baba effect.
A lot of investors, both in the U.S. and around the world, are cheering Alibaba's successful trading debut at the New York Stock Exchange. Michelle, I'm sure there are a lot of companies that are watching Alibaba very closely, particularly Chinese companies that are hoping to go public.
I'm sure many would like to emulate that kind of success, and we'll see what kind of trend that this huge Alibaba IPO sets. Now, Tracy, speaking of China, Alibaba does control 80% of the e-commerce activity in China. And during the roadshow, Jack Ma did stress how much he wants to focus on the US and on Europe. Now, are investors looking for him to focus on China, or are they looking for him to take on the likes of Amazon and eBay here in the US?
Investors are looking for Jack Ma to focus solely on China. Now, Jack Ma has said that he does want to expand in the United States and Europe and even other parts of Asia. But when investors invest in a company like Alibaba, they're using that as their hot ticket, their one-way ticket into China, into the Chinese market. Alibaba could, from a lot of the analysts that I've been talking to, and I've interviewed over a dozen analysts in the last few weeks, I'm sure you have as well, in the lead up to today's IPO, and they all say one thing, and that is the chances of Alibaba beating out Amazon or eBay on home turf is very unlikely. What will happen is that if Alibaba does beat out the likes of Amazon, it will be in the international markets. Alibaba has its work cut out for itself because Tencent, China's largest internet company, is Alibaba's biggest competitor. Baidu, China's largest search engine, it's similar to Google, is also Alibaba's big competitor. So Alibaba is really looking over its shoulder and making sure that it stays one step ahead of the game in China.
Well, one area where Alibaba is certainly ahead of the game and developing is Alipay, and that's the online payment model that it has. Now, Jack Ma did kind of spin that off from Alibaba with a separate company.
That's right, yeah.
By a vote that many say was a bit questionable, how he made that move.
Didn't agree with that.
Yahoo's certainly not very big on that decision, but nonetheless, Alibaba still controls about 34% of Alipay, and it is being called one of the crown jewels.
It's the sleeping giant, really. Alipay is like Alibaba's forgotten child. Alibaba, as you mentioned, spun off Alipay back in 2011, but Alibaba still controls a 37.5% stake in Alipay, and this is extremely lucrative because Alipay, little known about the company, but it is in fact one of the largest online payment systems in the entire world. It powers 51% of all the online payments in China, much more than Tencent's Tenpay, which powers about 15%. And some analysts I spoke to say that Alipay is worth, let's say roughly, let's call it $25 billion. So if Alipay does file for an IPO, that means Alibaba could really reap the benefits.
That would be another big story. We'll be all over that if that happens. Thanks so much, Tracy Tandon.